30 years to the day. Retired Colonel Dr. Jacques Neriah, you were a policy advisor.
The policy advisor.
The policy advisor to Yitzhak Rabin. Take us back 30 years, your thoughts, your feelings.
Well, you know, the last question was about his legacy, and the lady said the peace and security. Well, the peace was not the item. What was the real item in Rabin's mind was separation. And I think that this is the last effort ever done in Israel to separate Jews from Arab, Jews from Palestinians. This was his nightmare. His nightmare was to realize that Jews in the state of Israel would not have the total majority. He thought that 18% would be enough for a minority of Arabs. Today we are far beyond that, and this is the real legacy that was not accomplished by after the death of Rabin. But Rabin inherited a schism in the society. It's not. I mean, the hatred didn't come from day one. The hatred was, it's a continuous build-up since 1977 when the Labour lost power and Begin took the reins of power. Then this society just exploded and imploded inside. We reached a situation where Rabin just said very clearly that his goal was to reach, in fact, peace with Syria. Why with Syria? Because Syria was the asset that was that controlled the whole Middle East. Peace with Syria would neutralize all the enemies around Israel. He had no idea that we could reach any agreement with the PLO. In fact, he was surprised by Paris. He was surprised, and he was dragged into a situation where finally he did not know the details of it. How do I know that he didn't know the details? Well, he sent me once to Tunis to speak to Arafat about a fax that was sent to the office with a logo that was really revolting. It was, I mean, the map of Palestine with an arrow. We are coming back, and I said to Arafat, this is not something that we can accept in the office. So I mean, but the conversation continued. And he told me that he saw himself, in fact, master of the whole West Bank in Gaza. And the West Bank would begin in En Gev, facing Tiberias, until En Gedi. So when I came back and I told that to Rabin, he said, "Are you sure that this is what you heard?" I said, "Look, I mean, you can ask Amos Gilad, who was the Deputy Secretary of the Military. You can ask him. I mean, I took the notes. He took the notes also. He didn't believe me. He didn't believe me. He said to me, go to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and ask for the records of the Oslo, the meetings. I got 2 pages. It was blah, 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 nothing inside. I came back to him. I said to him, there's nothing there. He didn't say a word. The next week, we had a summit meeting in Cairo, and Rabin said, let me first talk to Arafat, and then we'll meet on the plenary session. He began the meeting with Arafat. 5 minutes. This is what he needed more. He came out. He was as red as your jacket. He was so furious. We were his entourage around him, and we were asking what happened. What happened? And he said to everybody, he said, Jacques was right. And he said a sentence that I cannot forget ever. He said, it's a pity I didn't meet Arafat before signing the agreement on Oslo. Had I met him and had I known his positions, I wouldn't have signed. And this is what this is what I carry all the time. That this is, when you say the devil is in details, the devil wasn't the details. They came with an idea, with a cheese with big holes. The most important was to reach an agreement, and then, of course, to present yourself to the Nobel Prize and blah blah blah. This is this is part of the whole setup. And Rabin, finally drawn into that situation, had an explanation. We were sitting around the table in the Ministry of Defense, and he said, "Okay, what do all the big guys, top brass of the army?" said, "Who thinks? What is more important in your view, an agreement with Syria or an agreement with the PLO?" Not even one raised in hands for the PLO. And he said, "Gentlemen, I don't envy the Prime Minister. He just stood up and said, I don't envy the Prime Minister who will withdraw from the Golan Heights. With the Palestinians, it's different. It is our backyard. And if there's a problem, we'll go back. Look what's happening today.
And to that exact point, Michal, look what is happening today. You're talking, Jacques, about the political tensions and divisions 30 years ago and the situation right now, the parallels, the lessons learned. Tell us more.
So I'll say the devastating part, and listening to Jacques, I had a bit of a different experience. I was much younger. I was very traumatized, as all of us were. I wasn't there on the Saturday night, but we were watching live the entire thing unfold. And I was devastated. My prime minister was murdered, assassinated by a fellow Jew. And devastatingly, I'll say, it didn't begin then. And because of the assassination, we actually never had the conversations that we needed to have. The conversations of healing and the rifts. And Jacques described 1977 as many of the same sort of continuation of the deep-seated, not just arguments, well beyond just arguments of how it is that Israel can proceed. And I was saying to Jacques before, during the break, I remember those very same protests outside of Begin's home during the Lebanon war that killed him. Basically, he resigned saying, I can't anymore, because of protests like those. So we come by these protests honestly. They didn't start then and they didn't end then. But what was different, and actually Natan Sharansky spoke about what he does every year on this day, which is to fast. Because in our tradition, we know that we fast on Tzom Gedalia because we know there was a king, Gedaliah ben Achikam, and we know that he was assassinated. And we might not remember exactly why, and we might not remember exactly who was right and who was wrong. But we remember that never, ever are we to take the law and the life of a fellow Jew, including our own leader, into our own hands. We remember that the ability and the responsibility to have these conversations in a democracy that allows for change only in democratic ways is one that we take with us, including to the modern state of Israel. And I'll say, from a very sort of hopeful place in understanding the role of our generation, is it is incumbent upon our generation, as we have seen happen far too often in the past 30 years, that it is the extremes, and we witnessed some of them, including in this clip, the extremes dictate the discourse and the conduct. It doesn't have to reach the level of an assassination. Of course, that is the ultimate extreme. But so long as the silent, moderate majority, silent or silenced, does not speak up, then it's the radicals and the extremes that take over the airspace and that actually dictate our conduct. And I hope that that is the lesson that we can begin to learn 30 years later, making this day, as Natan Sharansky recommends, one that we remember for thousands of years forward, in the way that he marks it, by fasting, in remembering each of our responsibility, not each of the other person's responsibility and what they did wrong to contribute, but what each of us did wrong, in that internal sort of gazing understanding of what it is that we can do in order to do it differently as we move ahead.
With that message, a big thank you, Michal Kotler-Wunsch and retired Colonel Dr. Jacques Neriah. Appreciate your insights on this day, 30 years later.